Hello, everyone. It's Kevin De Silva here again, and on Living in Los Angeles. Today, we are going to talk about selling your property or leasing your property. Do you want to be an LA landlord or do you want to cash in your chips? That is the ultimate question that everybody ponders after they've bought a house, they've lived in the house, they've outgrown the house, and they need to go somewhere else. So, you bought your house, you've lived in it, maybe you've outgrown it. Either you need more space, you've doubled your family size, or your kids have all moved out. Either which way, this house does not work for you and you're ready to move on. The biggest question is, do you sell it or do you keep it? Let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of both of them. Let's be real. Los Angeles holds a place in everybody's heart, and you own a piece of that real estate market. You bought your house, you made a wise decision, and the question here is, do I rent it to somebody else or do I cash in my chips? And everything does depend. The advantages of renting your house out are numerous. One, you bought it typically on a fixed rate mortgage, which means that your payments are fixed, and as rent goes up, you'll make more and more money every month. Now, when you're renting the house out, you want to see, am I cash flow positive from the beginning? If you're not, you might want to reconsider either moving or just selling, grabbing your equity, and moving on to another property. Two, appreciation. You've already owned the property this long, and I'm pretty sure your property value's gone up quite a bit, which is why you're considering keeping it. Now, when you keep it and you rent it out, not only does your rent typically go up over the years, your property value additionally goes up over the years. And with that lower cost basis, this could be the best opportunity you have to cash flow on a property. And of course, tax benefits. When you rent out a property, there are some funny things you can do that you couldn't do when it was your house. When it was your house that you were living in, it was your primary residence, you had some tax advantages, but when you rent it out, you get to depreciate the value of the property. Definitely check with an accountant or an enrolled agent to discuss recapturing, because just because you can write off a depreciation on your taxes, it's an imaginary cost associated with the property. If you sell it within a certain time period, the federal government can actually recapture that write-off at a future date. So just keep that in mind. Consult with a CPA before you start deducting it on your taxes. And in which case, I highly recommend hiring a CPA if you have an investment property. On the note of depreciation, there are two types of depreciation. When you bought the property, you can run on what is roughly a 28-year schedule. It's a straight line method, which means the structure of the property loses a certain amount of value for tax purposes a year. And then there are bonus depreciation that you can write off. This is where you've made improvements to the property, and those costs can be depreciated on what is about an 8-year schedule. If you do this right, you can actually reduce your tax liability. But the reality is, you don't get away with it. It reduces your cost basis. So when you're renting it out, if you needed to sell in the future, you would end up with a larger capital gains bill. The best part about the cash flow and the depreciation and all these advantages is that you're building equity in the property while somebody else pays your mortgage, essentially. One of my favorite aspects about keeping the property as a rental is that you can tap into that equity at some point in the future, and you could use that money to either buy another investment property, improve the property, its value, and its rental potential, or just pull the cash out, start going on some vacations, especially if you have a lot of cash flow on the property that can cover additional debt. You can pull that money out now. You can buy a car, you can go on vacation, you can pay for a wedding, pay for college, all kinds of things. A home equity line of credit is a great way to tap into your property's value without selling the home. Now, these are all really good advantages of owning a property and renting it out. But what are the disadvantages? Well, number one, you're responsible for the property. If something breaks, you are supposed to pay for it. And if you can't, you can have a very upset tenant, and there are legal consequences where the tenant could sue you for not making repairs that make the property livable. These are all risks associated with owning the property and being a landlord. Number 2, you have to find a renter. And while you're looking for a renter, if the house sits vacant, guess what? The mortgage lender does not care. You still have to make your mortgage payments. So that is a situation where you don't have money coming in, but you have money going out, and you really need to make it happen. Although I've done over 50 rentals and I've only had 2 people move early, I haven't had anybody miss payments. I have heard stories where it has happened. And if you go at it yourself and you don't screen the tenant properly, there is a chance that you miss something. If that tenant stops paying you, once again, you have a property that isn't bringing in any money. You have bills that need to be paid. And now it's even worse than looking for a tenant because you have a tenant you need to get rid of, but who's not paying you, so you have to take them to court. This can cost you legal fees. This can obviously cost you loss of income, but on top of that, you can't replace the tenant, so it's not like you can just put another tenant in there. You have to wait until that tenant gets out. And although this is a passive income, which means you're essentially collecting rent payments, owning real estate isn't always so passive. You do have to make improvements to the property to keep it livable. You have to make repairs. You have to get it rented out. It's not like you're just buying something, sitting back and collecting rent checks. Now, you could hire somebody to do that for you, but that will dig into your profitability. A lot of times, property managers tend to charge between 5 and 10% of the gross rent, which means that take your gross rent, let's say you're renting your property out for $3,500, go ahead and just take $350 off that, and that's what you're left with. And government restrictions. Government restrictions mean like rent control. The government can restrict how much you can raise your rent by. They can restrict your ability to vacate a tenant. Let's say you want to sell the property, which leads me into the next one. If you had to sell the property with a tenant in there, it significantly reduces the value of your property unless it's an investment style property. If you own a 5-unit building, it's great that you have rental. If you own a single family house, the person who's willing to pay you the most money is typically somebody who wants to live there. Now, when done right, leasing your property out can make a lot of sense. But if you're not comfortable with it, then maybe selling your property is the best option. Let's talk about some of the disadvantages. We're starting backwards because I'm going to end with the advantages. One of the main disadvantages of selling your property is if you've locked in a lower interest rate, when you sell your property, you don't get to carry that interest rate to a new property. You have to take a loan at the new interest rate, which right now, if you refied or you purchased during the pandemic, you're probably sitting around 3%. And right now, rates are more around 5, 6, and 7%. So right then and there, that is a huge disadvantage of letting go. One of the clear disadvantages is also you lose out on potential rental income. Now, if you're cash flow negative, which means your rent that you would get for the house is less than your mortgage plus all other fees and expenses like insurance, etc., then it's probably not a good idea because you don't want to be paying every month for a house you don't even live in anymore just to build some equity. But you do lose out on that rental income because at some point in the future, it probably will be cash flow positive. And of course, the memories. Whether it's your first house or it's your 5th house, you've lived in it with your family, you've lived in it with your friends, you've had friends over, you've had family over, maybe you got your new job at that house. Maybe you had an amazing birthday celebration. Maybe you hosted a wedding. You never know. You're selling those memories, and those memories go out and all you're left with are photos. That's pale in comparison to the advantages. Let's really talk about all the advantages of selling your home. Number 1, one of the clearest advantages are capital gains. That means you bought it for X, you sold it for Y, and the government lets you keep a chunk of that, or all of it, depending on how much it is, tax-free. You'll never get that opportunity with another property unless you use a tax-deferred vehicle, and it's not that you're getting out of taxes, it's that You're just not paying taxes yet. Number 2, when you sell your property, if you time it right throughout the year, there's a very good chance that if you price it right, you will get multiple offers. You'll get buyers bidding for your house, and which will drive the price up. This will put more money in your pocket. Number 3, money in your pocket. When you sell the house, you get to unlock the equity, which is how much you owe versus how much it's worth. You get to unlock that. You can use it to buy another house. You can use it to retire. You can give the money to charity. Really, it's yours to do with as you please. And, of course, you don't have the burden of being a landlord. You don't have to worry about anything. The cash is in your pocket. The home is no longer yours. Just make sure you do your disclosures and you do them right. Be honest on your disclosures and everything will be great for you in the future. So let's recap. If you rent your property out, you get a number of tax advantages that you didn't have when you were living in the property. You also, as long as you're cash flow positive, you get monthly rental income that hopefully is more than your mortgage. And of course, you still get to appreciate with the property, so you're building equity while somebody else is hopefully paying all your mortgage. But the disadvantages of renting your property out, you're responsible for the property. You're liable for damages on the property and the repairs. If somebody gets hurt, you can get sued. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, and you're ultimately responsible that you wouldn't be if you just sold it. And there is the chance that your tenant doesn't work out. There's a tenant risk. If you don't screen your tenant properly, you don't go through the proper protocols, you might have missed something and they could stop paying your rent, and your recourse is to take them to court to get them out, and you're losing money while you don't get the rent. And if you sell the property, let's be real. You've sold a piece of LA real estate. You've let go of it. You're getting money in the bank for it, but you're missing out on any rental income. You could potentially have capital gains in excess of your tax exemptions, and you are selling memories that you had when you lived at the home. But the advantages are great. You are releasing yourself of a lot of the liability. As long as you make your disclosures properly and you're open about all the questions that you have to answer, you should be able to just move on without any issue. And so you're releasing almost all the liability from the property. You have the cash in your pocket, and it allows you to do whatever you want in the future. Really, by hiring the right agent, as ourselves, marketing it properly, and getting the most amount of money from the sale, you can go on and complete the next chapter of your life and live the way that you want to live. Are you liking what you're seeing on this video? Do you like what you see on our channel? Hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications so that you're the first person to know when we publish new content to help you make money in real estate here in the lovely city of Los Angeles. It's my favorite place. I was born here, and we're bringing you all the goods.